Welcome everybody to the Sunday live stream. I'm joined as ever with my buddy Jerry. Jerry, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello. So we got a lot of things to go over, so let's just jump right into it. First of all, it's a good day. You know, we're on a little bit of a little mini pump, even though, let's be honest, the market cap is still 3.6 trillion, which means that we somehow have lost $500 billion somewhere, maybe 600 billion. I don't know. But it is nice to see a little bit of a green day. Maybe we get back into it, but Bitcoin's up a little bit, Ethereum's up a little bit, not a big deal. Let's see, probably one of the big winners is Zcash, up 8.7 or 183% in a month. Jerry, do you have any Zcash, and why do you think this thing is pumping so much anyhow?
I don't, and I wish I would have caught wind of the indicator that has caused this incredible surge in Zcash, because I'm not opposed to privacy coins, right? I think there's going to be a time and a place for them. I like what Cardano's doing with Midnight. We'll see how that privacy layer, right? The things that basically apply to identity, I think are really important, and they're paving the way for that. So if Zcash continues, it might be worth getting some just to see if it continues. Because if the fundamentals are correct, then it will continue. Hey, do we have any Zcash people in the audience today?
Let's see. So everybody who's got Zcash, tell me why it's pumping so hard. I know that there was a halving just recently, and that kind of pulls things in. And of course, the big talk about privacy and going off on that. So yeah, let's see how it works out. D.A.N says Zcash is literally Bitcoin but privacy if it had a halving. So we are definitely a proof of work type of format. So that's great. I mean, for everybody who will hold Zcash, good for you. I don't hold it. I don't think Jerry holds it, but it doesn't really matter.
We're look into mining it.
Yeah, now we look into mining it. Of course, when it's like, pumping up like crazy. But it is what it is. Anyhow, before we get into the whole talk about midterms and presidential elections, I just want to put this out there. I mean, speaking of presidents, matter of fact, this was from, who's this? Liz Ann Saunders. More importantly, this is from Visual Capitalist. I find this quite interesting, and it looks like that people are spending, and this is the United States. Sound off in the comment section where you're at and how much you're paying for rent. But it looks like 30% of people in Florida are paying over half of their salary for rent. Nationwide, 24% of renter households spend more than half their income on rent. Florida is the most rent-burdened state, and that's 30% of those people. Probably the biggest offenders would be New York, next to it, 27%, which I never understood why people are talking about, oh, this guy Ndami won, so I'm going to move to Florida. I'll have fun paying more money. And then California is 27.5%. Nevada is 28%. Jeez Louise. I just moved back to North Dakota, 15.7%. So I find this interesting that this is the problem with people paying so much rent. And the reason why it's such a problem is because, let's be honest, housing is massively, massively overpriced. There's no reason why we should have these types of prices right now. It's ridiculous. And because of that, President Trump came out and said, hey, you know what we should do? 50-year mortgages, baby. 50-year mortgages. And this was from Fortune. I didn't know this other part here. According to Redfin data, the median U.S. household is currently spending 39% of its monthly income on mortgage repayment. So in this piece, we're talking about rent. In this piece, we're talking about the actual mortgage payment that you are owning the house and you're paying 40% of it. Gone are the days when you saw Homer Simpson drive up in a car so he could have his wife stay at home with his 3 kids and just mess around at the nuclear power plant. That's not happening anymore. It's just ridiculous just how much it's actually being paid. So before we get into like the numbers of this and how I think this is kind of like a bad choice, Jerry, what are your thoughts on Presidente Trump putting out the 50-year mortgage?
I think it sounds good, right? There's an element of it that sounds good. It instills a vision of much lower payments, a much easier way to afford purchasing a home. And it makes me wonder, when you do the digging, what will be the results when we look into, does it change the down payment structure of home acquisition? What are the actual payment differences between a 30-year mortgage with the very same interest rate as a 50-year mortgage, right? I think it's important to learn these tools to figure out, to get those answers, because what can sound excellent can actually be detrimental.
Yeah.
And I think only research will give us the answer.
Well, I think, well, first of all, this is a good one. Ms. Ramcano says, I'm in Mexico. My rent is $600 a month. That's the new move. And of course, other people were talking about how it's like $1,550, $1,200, 1 bedroom, 1 bath. Jerry, over in Costa Rica, what are you looking at?
So I'm in a 1,400 square foot single floor, 2 bedroom, 1 bath with a laundry room, living room, and kitchen, and I pay $320 a month.
You son of a, good for you, Jerry. Good for you. That's awesome. Hey, also, because
in a great neighborhood.
My God, why are we not living in Costa Rica? Everybody, did you hear that? That's how much Jerry's paying. Also, Jerry, if you could also, right now we're going through a tumultuous time for health insurance. And there's a big fight between the Dems and the Republicans. But just real quick, I'd like you to talk about, you had a cardiac issue at one point in your life there in Costa Rica. You had to get airlifted out. You had to go into ICU. I think you had surgery.
Cardiac ICU.
Cardiac ICU. You had, did you have surgery?
I had what they call an angioplasty. They came into my wrist with a basically a wire with a stent on the end of it to go to my heart and put in a stent.
Yeah, I used to work.
It didn't take, but they did do the procedure.
Yeah, and then you were in the hospital.
$5,100.
Okay, and then you were in the hospital for a little bit of time, like 5 days. How much did all of that cost you?
Under $6,000.
Unbelievable. Good
and
for you.
You can get what they call it CAHA here. The CAHA here, total full health insurance, $40 a month.
Yeah, now we're talking. All right, so for all Americans, Canadians, UK, parts of Europe, you just know what Jerry just told you. Make a lot of sense maybe to check that out. Anyhow, we're not real estate agents, but I would like to talk real quick just about those 50-year mortgage rates. First of all, I thought it'd be fantastic if they had 0 down payments, but I took a look at it and things have changed a little bit since I did my first house. VA loans were always VA for us. It was always 0%. USDA loans, also 0% down. Conventional loans, as we were talking about the 20%. FHA loans now, it's only, or excuse me, conventional is 3 to 5% down. So if you're looking at a $400,000 house, and you're looking at what, $20,000 for 5%, roughly, I don't know, 13.5, 15, somewhere around there for if you're a 3, and the FHA loan 3.5. So I thought to myself, I'm like, you know, that's not the issue then. It's not the down payment per se, even though it's a pain in the A for some people. It's just the cost of the housing, which is so ridiculous. So what does that mean if we did a 50-year loan? And this, I think, where a lot of people know where I'm going with this. Amortization tables. So this is not a good idea, especially if you're going over 50 years for interest. And if you are a young person who maybe you've gotten into loans, student loans and things like that, take a look at the interest rate that you're paying because you're getting hosed. So this was over at calculator.net. The original loan amount, let's say the average house right now is around $430,000 in America. Let's just take $400,000. Original loan term of 50 years. Let's give it a generous 6% interest rate, and we have 50 years to go. Your monthly payment is only $2,100. That's not bad. $2,100. I know I saw some people in the comment section saying that, hey, 1 bed, 1 bath is like $1,550 or $1,200 or whatever it was. So another $600. Okay, maybe you get a nice house. But your total payments is $1.2 million. And the interest payment is $863,000. You're paying double.
2 extra houses.
Yeah, essentially, you're getting screwed. So go take a look at your loan payment, what the interest rate, go take a look at your credit card payment, because whatever that is, you can run it here at calculator.net and just see how much you're getting screwed over with the interest rate. So no, like Jerry said when we were talking about this, he goes, there is not a bank out there that isn't loving the prospect of a 50-year loan. But let's be fair, Jerry, right? Let's be fair. Let's compare this to 30 years. 400,000, 30-year, and 6% interest, 30-year again. What's your payment per month? $23.98. That's an additional like $280 that you have to pay. And guess what? You get 15 years. So Jerry, what do you think about all this? Bad idea? Did I?
Here's the thing that we're not talking about, and that is what the private mortgage insurance costs are on top of this. Right? This calculator isn't factoring in PMI, which anytime you are in a loan situation where the loan to value is 80% or higher, it's legally required in all 50 states to have private mortgage insurance, right? Which can be, depending upon the issuer of that insurance, can be another $300 or $400 a month. You know what I mean? And so I think what it really goes to show us is that there are really two kinds of debt. There's one kind of debt that enslaves you, and there's one kind of debt that creates freedom for you. Which do you choose? So if you're going to use a mortgage to give yourself freedom with the place that you live in, your goal is to pay that thing off as fast as possible. Minimize the interest you pay to the bank as fast as you humanly can, right? So that your home can now become an asset that you can leverage for your life, as opposed to trying to stick a loan out for the term of the loan. What that 50-year loan said, $840,000 of interest that you pay. That's 2 extra of those homes. Yeah. Right? Your house times 2.
Yeah. Have fun with that.
On either side of you. I mean, that is just outrageous. But we don't think about that. When you're in a mentality of, I earn $1,000 a month and I'm trying to get ahead, sometimes you make decisions that ultimately long-term aren't in your best interest.
Very true. Long-term just isn't in your best interest. Is how things go. So behind that whole thing that we just talked about, One Step said it perfectly, which leads to my next thing we're going to talk about. He says, I paid off my 30-year mortgage by adding a principal-only payment each month.
Perfect.
What does that mean?
Perfect.
Look at this. So when we're doing stuff like that, see in here, there's this thing called this amortization table. And you can do this on anything, any kind of, well, your bank should give this to you. If not, you can run it through this website. But again, $23.98, the interest that you pay in the beginning is higher than the principal. So essentially that $2,000, that's gone. That's the interest. And they front load everything. So what One Step was talking about here is, he goes, okay, if I'm paying $28.98 or $23.98, right? And I'm paying all these types of things, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double up my principal payment. So instead of paying $23.98 per month, he'll pay $23.98 plus an additional one to give him $24.98, and he'll double his principal. Why is that great? That's great because the next month, this whole amortization table has to reset because you have less debt of what you did right there. And that's one of the ways to do it.
You can only be charged interest on the principal balance.
Yeah, there's that, and you have to make sure there's no prepayment penalties. Of course, most contracts don't do that.
Most don't, but you need to know if you do or don't. No, that's super smart. That's really smart. That's using debt in your favor.
That's the big thing.
That's leveraging your credit limit and your credit score to acquire an asset that will perpetually bring value to either your family's trust that you put the home into, whatever vehicle you're going to hold the asset in.
Yeah, and that's everything that you have debt into. Now, I don't want to turn this into a Dave Ramsey session, so that was I just thought it was interesting, a 50-year loan going from that, but you can see that you do save a lot of money going from there. But there is good debt, like Jerry was talking about. There is good debt, and what we're going to talk about is good debt is one of those things that we're all paying right now. I think most of us are still, or some of us are still dollar cost averaging Bitcoin. But I want to talk about this today, about where things are going, and I wanted to compare different cycles because there's some people there in the camp that the 4-year cycles of Bitcoin are over and it's just going to be gradual increase over time. There's some people that say, no, the 4-year cycles are still here. And there's some people that are kind of in the middle. I think that the 4-year cycles are still intact to a point, but we could have a little bit of an extension. And the reason is because you can't get around this thing called midterms or midterm elections. Midterms, if you're not from the United States, is essentially, it's 2 years after the president takes office. So the president, we have a presidential election year every 4 years. In between those 4 years, we have a midterm, which kind of reshuffles everything. And the markets do not like ambiguity, and they will start going, what's really going to happen here? Well, if we got another whole piece that, or another whole party that takes over, say, Congress, we're going to have a lot more issues and a lot more unknowns. So without further ado, this is what it is. I took a look and it said, actually I had to use ChatGPT. I said, give me a return of the stock market across the 4-year cycles related to the presidential election, 1 year post, midterm, and post-midterm year. I did not know this, that the post-midterm year on average for the stock market it doubles what you would think would be like the all-time highs. So you got the presidential election year, you go up 7%, which is kind of interesting, I suppose. 1 year post-presidential, which is where we're at right now. We nominated President Trump. He's in office. That was 2024. 2025, not a pretty good year, actually, for the stock market. But the midterm year is coming up in 2026. And because of that, we're probably going to see a very rocky road as we get into or farther into the year, particularly Q4 of 2026. And this is the thing that concerns me. But after that, 2027, we should look pretty good. Jared, before we go on, I'm going to stop rambling. Give us your insights of this.
Well, I think it's one of the things that it's one of these indicators where when we understand markets, when markets are going to base their decisions on things they're certain of, right? As opposed to willy-nilly, oh, we hope, right? We hope and pray. And so when you look at, like, for instance, let's take it back to Trump's run for this term. In November, when we knew he won, we saw the markets react very positively because there was a lot of expectation to actions he would make in office, right? And we knew that the lawmakers, the House and the Senate, had enough oomph that if some real initiative were to be put forward, that some change could happen. And look what did happen. We got our ETFs for the industry. We got a tremendous amount of certainty in regulatory elements that directly affect our industry, right? And in our industry, and we went from the 45,000 Bitcoin to the 125 in that period of time, right?
Right.
But now here we are with these midterms, and we're not really sure what the legislative branch of government, the House and the Senate, are going to be comprised of. Therefore, how do we really know what kind of laws will be affected? Mainly laws that are involved with spending, right? Spending, and because spending affects our markets, right? Those companies in the S&P that build things, the big government contractors that make a tremendous amount of taxpayer dollars, are predicated on what the House and the Senate do, right? The laws they pass. This bill to spend this much money. This bill to spend that much money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think once we get through this, I think the markets will have a better understanding of where things are going. That certainty will come into the institutions where capital gets deployed, and we'll see how much lending and deployment of capital goes into the things that will affect our marketplace.
And let's hope so. Will go into effects of our marketplace. So that will lead us to that one. Well said, Jerry. So we're taking a look here. The cycle, the 4-year cycles, it is interesting how it kind of overlays, because we all know this cycle, the 4-year cycle. We got a halving in 2012, get an all-time high, then we go down for a couple of years. Then we get another halving in 2016, and we hit an all-time high, we go down a couple of years, and so on and so forth. But look at this. If you overlay that with the midterms, that's the same time we have these massive runoffs. And it's happened again, and I think it'll keep happening again and again. this is where we're at. But then the question you have to ask yourself, and let me move some things around here real quick, because I'd like everybody to see this, is what is the actual? Because this is the historical, right? So we get a presidential election, it's 7, then we get a 6, then we 2, and then the post midterm year, there's a big run up, and we can kind of see it. Somewhat does that. But if we're talking about just, I'm not talking about crypto in this part here, but the actual is where we come down to what did the stock market do during this time. And you can see in 2012, as it relates a little bit to crypto, you had a 16, and then what happened the next month in the stock market? You had a 32%. In 2013, you had an all-time high. And then you still had a pretty good run at 13% in midterm, but then there was a big reset on 2015. 2016, the same thing happens again. We get a president, 21% for the all-time high. And look at that, only a 4% increase, even though it is what it is, but it's a midterm year and didn't make that many gains. And then, of course, we went into Joe Biden, pretty much the same thing, even though it was an 18% for 2022. I got to give it, that's pretty damn good. But as opposed to like 28, 26%, not so great. And just recently, we had the 2024, traditionally 7%, and it was up 25. And as far as like time to date, we're up 16%. So looking at this in a traditional sense, the midterm still is a time frame when there's a lot of unknowns, just like what Jerry talked about. Is this going to funnel into the sectors that we want it to, or is there going to be a lot of unknowns because of these new people being elected in, and the change and the rotation and things like that? And then, of course, if not one party has control of everything, then of course you have to actually legislate, and you actually have to come together and come to terms, which I got to tell you, I just don't see that really happening, especially right now with Dems and Republicans fighting over especially everything. But before I get into that, Jerry, what do you think about this? I heard the big sigh. I don't think you're very optimistic about this.
I don't know. I can't tell you foundationally why things are the way they are. But when you and I were young, like really young, I remember the two parties would debate. They had different viewpoints, but there was always this kind of underlying, we're all Americans at the end of the day, right? There was a patriotism element. Now it seems everything is really polarized. And you know, the right is about the right and the left is about the left, and they have very radically different philosophies, the hard right and the hard left. And it just, I don't know, man. I want to join a party that's all about Bitcoin appreciating in value. Where's that party? I want to sign up.
It's in El Salvador. That's pretty much it. So everybody, to get out too much political, I know there's some people that'll say like, well, and the 4-year cycles are still on, kind of like me, maybe me and Jerry. And then there's other people like the 4-year cycles are over. And whichever way you believe, you can make the case for either right now, definitely. But the big thing we're trying to talk about is because of the midterms that are coming up and it's November of 2026, which we have one more year. That's why I talked in the thumbnail and the title. We're kind of running out of time. Once we get to that point, I think we're going to see a lot of turmoil going on, and that's why I'm hoping that we can keep moving up. So let's continue this one. As a reminder, for this time frame when we have the midterms in 2013 and 2015, roughly 2014, we saw an 85% reduction in Bitcoin. The midterm in 2018, we saw 84% reduction. The midterm in 2022, we saw a 77% reduction. So with the midterms coming up, I don't know where it's going to go, but all I can tell you is that once a president gets nominated, doesn't take office, but gets nominated, it doesn't go below that price. So this is why I'm always saying that 69K could be the lowest. It could be 50K if we're thinking around 70K from 126. But I think that could be the low. And really, I should give time frames, but or or ranges, but this is where I think things are going, especially with midterms coming up. But I could be wrong. Jerry, what's your low ball thought?
I don't see us going. I don't see a huge market crash, whether it be in traditional legacy markets or the crypto industry per se. I think a lot of the exuberance has already been flushed out. I mean, that's just my personal stance. We may see 15-20% oscillations from where we are right now, but
Sure.
that isn't anywhere near the kind of volatility that we used to see in this industry even 2 years ago or beyond that, right? And so what I'm banking on is that one bipartisan issue, and that is asset holders always win in the long run.
That's a good point.
Right. And so regardless of your political leanings, the one bipartisan issue that we can all agree is not going to change, those who have if they continue to do the things they did to get what they got, will continue to do well. It's those people that keep slaving away, trading their time for money and using their money to buy depreciating assets as opposed to acquiring appreciating assets.
Yeah, you know what? It's a good point. If you just hold on the assets, usually pretty good. That's what I think the whales usually do. They're not so much about the 15-10% type of reduction or a little pump here and there. They're like, you know what? If I just hold on, things work pretty well. There's nuances to that. I will tell you, I'm pretty sure that the people from Luna and BitConnect are saying, wish I wouldn't have held on so damn tightly. But I mean, when you get into something good, like say Bitcoin, I think things are.
Right.
Not
Bitcoin, certain kinds of real estate, obviously gold. I don't think you can go wrong with Microsoft stock or Tesla.
No, so
Nvidia,
far.
AMD, those type of things. I think they still got 30-year runways to go.
Yeah, 30. And you know what else? When you talked about gold, we're going to get into that in a second. I think that's a good point of the assets they'll actually hold on to. But just to finish this piece up, I know people will say, but Rob, there's a Santa Claus rally coming. And
Ooh.
That could be true, but I just took a look at, and the Santa Claus rally is usually 5 days after Christmas plus 2 days. So you're looking at January 2nd or something around there, from like December 25th to January 2nd, like Santa Claus rally, essentially. But I'm just taking a look at December. And of course, in those midterms years, it's 0.3 negative, 2018, negative 10%. That's bad. And 2022, negative 6%. This is just in the stock market. And then, of course, if you take a look at 1 year prior, 2013, 17, 21, there was a nice little Santa Claus rally. So maybe in this December coming up for us, because we're in our all-time high type of year, maybe we do see a nice little rally. But like Jerry was talking about, what about gold? How is that done? And I want to take a look at specifically post ETFs, because with post ETFs, that was done 2004. I want to say, was it November? I can't remember, but it was in 2004. So I just took a look in 2005 on. So you got 10 and 10, 10 years and 10 years. And during this time for midterms, actually, it did really great. In 2006, midterms, it was up 19%. 2010, plus almost 30%. 2014, just a negative 1.8, not too bad. 2018, negative 1 and negative 0.4. But I think the reason is because of gold. Gold is a risk-off asset. And I think when people are a little bit scared of what potentially could happen, and we just saw that with this big influx for gold, so I can see it. But I think the bigger thing, and this will go back to Jerry's comment about gold and ETFs. If we just take a look at the there we go. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the 8 years after the gold ETF came in, look at those numbers. And this is why when I think about where Bitcoin is going and the market in general, because we just had our ETF in 2024, January, I think it was. I was get these months confused. But there was a nice little run for gold. Why couldn't there be a nice little run for Bitcoin? But I'm just telling you that it could happen. The difference between gold and Bitcoin, I know some people are going to disagree with me. Bitcoin right now is not a risk-off asset. For some people it is, the ones that get it, but for the majority of the normies, think that this is a risk on asset, and they don't see it like gold, even though they really should at some point. But Jerry, what's your thoughts about this before we wrap it up?
I think it's also really important to understand what an ETF actually does, right? An ETF gives a door, an on-ramp to a whole subset of the world's population, and that is people who have access to passive flow retirement funds, i.e., 401k plans, Roth IRA plans, regular IRA plans. Those ETFs become accessible to an entire subset of the global population who have access to those passive income vehicles, where before the ETF, people like you and me had to go to a gold dealer, or we had to get Bitcoin from Coinbase. It's a completely different world when you can talk to your Fidelity broker and say, okay, listen, I want $30 of this gold ETF in my Roth every month. I want $30 of the IBIT Bitcoin ETF in my IRA every month. Click, done. It's automatic. It's a passive flow. Boom, 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 boom. That compounds with market adoption.
See, and all comes down. That's what it all comes down to, right?
Well, it's important to understand that there is what those vehicles do. They give you access to a market that most likely wouldn't have participated without it.
Right. And I think there's a room for everybody to get into whichever one they want to go into, for these ETFs. So I definitely see it. But yeah, it's a good point. So then to wrap this up before we get into our favorite part, which would be the big Q&A, is price predictions and things.
Ooh.
There's a link in the description for a video called Price Predictions, Why Everybody is Wrong. And I even on this one, I even talk about, of course, how I got it wrong. But there's a lot of different things we hear from. I take a look at Tim Draper, Kathy Wood, Dan Moorhead, Max Kaiser, and a whole host of other ones. And they all got it wrong. Not even like close to being wrong, but like way, way wrong. And that's why like price predictions are just not a good thing. After I made all my mistakes. And that's why I feel bad for a guy named Josh. Josh, if you don't know, he's the one that predicted Bitcoin to go to 444,000. Had a lot of good data behind it, like we just talked about right now. But does that mean that's what's going to happen? Absolutely not. And unfortunately, Josh reports losing over 1.2 million on IBIT call options, which he bought after predicting Bitcoin would reach 444,000. So if you want to gamble, that's cool. But just remember that, for all this good stuff up here, we're all guessing. We're all making the best educated guess that we can possibly make, but it doesn't mean we're right. And Fred Krueger piles on by saying, this is the single stupidest thing this year was 444,000. Second place was treasury companies at 10 MNAV. And again, why I don't make price predictions is because Josh says, you're getting so old that you forgot your previous post where you predicted 400K. And that was on December 10th, 2024. And Fred Krueger did predict 400,000 Bitcoin. This is why we don't do these things. And that's pretty much it. All right, everybody. So that's it for today's video. If you like today's video, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. We talk about this time sensitive. But now let's get into the fun stuff where Jerry answers most of your questions. And I just tell Jerry how smart he is. All right. What do we got?
I love your sarcasm.
Yeah, that's not. You're a smart guy. Alex says that. He says that's actually a more plausible explanation of the 4-year cycles than Raul's everything code and a lot simpler. Well, if I'm going to say it, it has to be simple. Here, Jerry. Bodan said ETFs were fun when Bitcoin ETH pumped. When Sol, XRP, and Litecoin got ETFs, nothing happened. Haha. Well, I think that the Solana actually did pretty good. Pretty well. Let me take a look. It was kind of like a little tumultuous, a little bit of a laggard. But I will say, Jerry, I don't know if you caught this, but on Friday, was that Friday? What's the date today? The 9th?
Yeah.
Yeah.
7th.
Friday, we had an outflow of $558 million.
Yeah.
But look at the price of Bitcoin. I mean, it's up
Barely.
2.4%.
We're up over the weekend. Yeah. You know what's really interesting, and I'd be curious for the people that are watching us right now that are in the chat or even in the comments after the fact, how many of you are using those ETFs for 401k or Roth IRAs or IRAs? I set my Roth up, and I'm almost max contributing to those type of vehicles within that structure in hopes that I'll get all that tax free or pass it on to my kids, right? And allow them to allow it to mature until they take it over, because I have it in a trust, right?
Nice.
And so I'm curious because I think the long-term benefit of those far outweigh the speculatory gambling of doing things like what that guy did, taking iBit and doing options, whether it be, covered calls or naked puts, whatever he did. I think there's some merit in that, no differently than the way some of us were able to get Microsoft in a retirement account when we started back in the 90s.
Yeah, good question. So the question then, Jared, to clarify, is who is using ETFs and who's not using ETFs?
Yeah, who are using them in retirement accounts? Because I think that's a long-term type of thing, as opposed to my brokerage account, which I trade in and out of all the time.
Hold on real quick. I'm gonna do what's called a poll.
Ooh.
Yeah, start a poll. Who is using ETFs to buy Bitcoin? ETFs. No ETFs. Let's start it. Let's see what people have. That's a good question. My big question is, and I wonder if there's a way to actually to gauge this or to check the data. I wonder how many people actually sold their their Bitcoin, not physical Bitcoin, their Bitcoin that they had in cold storage and moved it over and bought ETFs like Plan B did. And I think a lot of other people did. I wonder if there's a way to track that.
There are people that are maximizing their ability to contribute to like stuff like iTRUST.
Yeah.
Right? iTRUST, I can't send them Bitcoin.
Right. Well, no. Well,
Bitcoin, send them the money and buy Bitcoin within my Roth, right?
Yeah, but you can do, if you want to do custody, you can send them, like I sent them my Bitcoin to do custody. Yeah,
but custody doesn't give me the tax haven that a Roth does.
That's true.
Right? I mean, the reason why I'm not saying that iTRUST isn't a good partner for custody. That isn't what I'm trying to imply. What I'm implying is, if I'm going to use iTRUST, I'm thinking I want to maximize my tax-free distribution when I do want that money or I want to borrow against it.
Well, let me tell you something.
Either or, those two options.
There is this guy named Mark Kohler. He's a CPA and lawyer, and he was on the show. I think we had him like 3 weeks ago or so. And one of the things that he talked about, which kind of blew my mind, was that because of the big, beautiful bill, you can take the gains that you have in your crypto, and please watch the video again because I'm going to butcher what he said. You can take the potential gains that you're going to get from crypto and roll them into another asset. And we use the example of real estate. And he said, and with real estate, you can separate the real estate from the actual structure that is being built on the land and the land itself. And you have to have a survey and you have to go through this whole process, right? But then the land isn't the part that is tax deficient or deduction. You can use your house, the actual structure that you built on top of it. So let's just say, for example,
because the house appreciates, but the land doesn't.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, that would make sense.
So we give an example, like if let's say you make $100,000, cap gains is $20,000. You use that to buy property, and then $15,000 was the house, and the land was $5,000. You can just deduct the $15,000, not pay that in capital gains tax. So that was one thing I learned, which is pretty cool. And he just did this video today, or a couple days ago, I guess, where how the rich sell crypto without paying taxes. And what he talks about is a trust like you had, Jerry, but where you set it up to where there's a certain percentage that actually goes to charity, and that becomes all tax deductible. And it was interesting how they set it up. And again, I think this is a new thing because the big beautiful bill that's come out. So that's a lot of stuff. Go watch Mark Kohler; he'll tell you.
One of the great elements of your channel is that we get access to a myriad of different voices with different value adds, each voice adding its own value that's separate from the others.
That's true. Which is you guys get the advantage of listening to all my errant thoughts of all the things that I watch on YouTube, and then give it to you and say, hey, that's it. Okay, what else we got? Follow Truth says, I use ETFs, iTRUST, and ROTH IRA. iTRUST spot pricing is off. Not a great thing.
Okay, I see what he's saying.
Yeah. These spreads are a real murder. And that's on all exchanges. And you know what's even worse for spreads? I just learned this a couple weeks ago. The spreads on gold is ridiculous. Like there was a YouTuber that went, I think it was in Minnesota. It's a 3% spread when you buy and a 3% spread when you sell. So to make yourself profitable, you got to hit 6%. And then somebody, I think it was D.A.N from UK, said that it was 5 and 5. You got to make a 10% profit to actually break even. I'm like, that's ridiculous.
But that's the price of getting free transactions. That's the price of getting a free service.
Yeah, that is it. And then so like I did a video on how to beat the spreads, and basically is you're not going to beat them, but you can join them. Now you can
time to beat the spread.
Time to beat the spread. You can put in your sell orders and buy orders, and just kind of kick it up a little bit. And that's essentially the whole thing. So you're not gonna, if it says Bitcoin 103 on one exchange and it says Bitcoin 104,500 on another exchange, you can just say, okay, I want to buy Bitcoin at 102, and you set that limit order, and then when it hits 102, you get it. Unfortunately, you're still going to be paying that 103, but it's like, hey, I got what I really wanted to anyhow. So no, you're not beating the spread, but you can get the price that you want, and that's really what the important thing is. All right. Oh, D.A.N says it wasn't me. Sorry, D.A.N. I was thinking of people from the UK. I don't know who else it was. Somebody. Well, it's not free. Meme says best to go on Coinbase Advanced. That's another one. Set a limit order. Coinbase. Have you ever used Coinbase Advanced, Jer?
No.
I have. It's all right. It works pretty well. I'm not a fan of Coinbase at all, but yeah.
They always have the liquidity, though.
They do. They always have liquidity. Robert says, I noticed they always have liquidity. And they're pretty safe, essentially, right? I don't know. Robert Rouser says, I noticed Rob has developed spots in his face. Is he okay? There's a big spot here and a big spot here, literally I'm Hindu or something. And this is because I got lasered off these like keratinosis, some precancerous cells, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, good for you, man.
Yeah, so I got to get these things before they develop into like full-blown something or other. Yeah, they just laser you, and you look ridiculous for a week or so. Let's see. B. Armstrong Stunner is called. What was this? Did you hear about this? I heard it was Brian Armstrong was like rattling off some type of like prediction market percentages at the end of the earnings call. And everybody
I did not know that. I don't pay enough attention to Coinbase as a business to follow those kind of things. Andy, give us the link to the X article or the Medium article or the news article that gives us the details. That'd be interesting to read up on.
That would be good. Let's see.
Anytime Brian Armstrong makes a fool of himself, I'd like to know about it.
Well, I don't know if it was on purpose or not. That's a big thing. And then D.A.N says, if your Bitcoin isn't in a self-custody wallet, you don't own it. That includes ETFs, which is true. It's a true statement. I just don't give anybody a hard time if they want to do ETFs or some kind of other custody, because I've seen a lot of people, I don't know if you have, Jerry, but I've seen a lot of people lose crypto because it's in a cold storage or because they get social engineered hack or a pig butchering scam or something. And it's heartbreaking. At least
Unfortunately, there's no way to compound gains from Bitcoin in your self-custody wallet, and there's no way to take tax advantage of tax deferred or no tax retirement account laws and privileges in a self-custody wallet. I think, you know, you have to juggle, and the what they call adjusted risk profile of an ETF in an IRA is pretty damn safe. I mean, it would be the black swan of black swans for you to not be able to maintain ownership, or at least write a receivership of your assets through a vehicle like that, versus, you know, some other thing. If you got a Fidelity ETF Roth IRA, an ETF in a Roth IRA with Fidelity, that is gold nuts security. You can be guaranteed you're going to have access to that for your whole life.
You know, there's some things that the government does that actually works out, like a little regulation, the overseeing of things. Because like before this, I think it was Gary Gensler who gave the tie-breaking vote for the Bitcoin ETF. If it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have all these protections that we have right now. There are some things they do that actually works out.
The wonderful thing that we can rest upon is the incentive structure of those things are aligned for the wealthy and the politically connected, as well as the politicians, as it is for you and I. That's one of those systems where we're treated fairly. My stock in Fidelity is treated exactly the same way as President Trump's stock in Fidelity. We have the same rights. Our incentives are in line there. I can't say the same for FTX. I can't say the same for Voyager. I can't say the same for Celsius or Luna or any of the others.
Yeah. Well, obviously. Then those guys, they came and went, and they were the gamblers, unfortunately. Awful situation. How about this one? Stanley says, I'm considering taking Bitcoin-backed loans instead of selling, but I don't know.
I've done a lot of study in that. It's a very viable thing to do. Be careful who you do it with, and be very, very careful at the loan to value ratio that you take the loan at. Like most places will offer anywhere from 90 to 50% loan to value. I would strongly suggest never exceeding 15% loan to value. So if you're going to put up $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, you get a $150 loan.
That's pretty good.
I would not do more than that, because there is still volatility in this space, and you don't want to be that guy who gets wiped out. I was that guy in 2021. Trust me when I tell you, I have been in the seat of oh, this wasn't supposed to happen. Oops, it did happen.
Oopsie. Yeah, I saw this price prediction video, and they said it was going to the moon, so I don't know what the hell's happening. Yeah. And this was James George says it too. Feels a lot like 2021 when so many said we were going to at least 150K. It's very true.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, if you think about it, return on investment in 2016, 17, you were looking at like a 20x. I remember when at the beginning of 2017 was when I put on $1,000, right? And then from the high to the next high, so 64,000, excuse me, 20,000 to 67,000, that's roughly a 3x, right? So you went from a 20x from that high to just a paltry 3x, right? And then that's 67,000. And if you just doubled that, that's essentially the high that we got on October 6th. I mean, a little bit less, but so you went from 20 to 3, maybe to 2, and that's it. Who knows? Maybe it keeps going up, but yeah, I got to believe with James here that could be does feel a lot like it. And people are always like flabbergasted, like I can't believe it only went to 126,000. Yeah, Mr. Bird, I heard Celsius was a great place to put Bitcoin. Yeah, Alex Mashinsky was quite the guy to tell us all those things. And before we get too down the dumps, Master Blaster thankfully says Bitcoin is 105,000 and climbing. Thank you, Blaster.
I am so happy that I know how to use the set limit order function. because I was able to get 2 buys under 100 grand earlier in the week.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Little ones. I mean, nothing, nothing big. I don't have a lot of money to play around with, but I was able to deploy 2 $100 buys, and both of them hit under the 100 grand mark.
Well, Jerry, you're saving so much in rent. I can't believe it. Rent and insurance.
Oh, dude, I live like a king, and I have a fixed income of $1,500.
That's crazy. Anything you want right there, right? Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Where you're best treated. Isn't that what the digital
Nomad
guide says? Yeah, I like that channel. There's a lot of places on the planet that people in the United States and Canada could easily go to find a really high quality of life at pennies on the dollar compared to the US.
That's the truth. US is becoming super expensive. Rusty Boss says, I agree with Jerry. If Bitcoin goes down to 0.78 like it always does in the bear, the price will be 40K. Yeah, could be. 40K. Wow.
Wow.
How about this one? Cardano at midnight. What's your thoughts?
Ooh, I like. Me likey. I think there are elements. I'll tell you why I like midnight. Because I think midnight will help usher in the technologies to where we can actually get mass adoption for digital identity. And I think that is fundamental to legal, healthcare, travel, so many elements from a global perspective, not just one jurisdiction.
Yeah, from a global perspective, sure.
From a global perspective. And I think that's important, right? As somebody who lives out in the United States, I'm constantly wrestling with KYC, AL, anti-money laundering, blah, blah, blah. Anytime I want to move a couple of bucks, it's a real thing.
Yeah. How about this one? Just join the chat. You think the early Bitcoin whales that have been selling on the way up will return, or are they done? What's your thoughts on this?
It all depends on what their capital needs are, right? I mean, if you were acquiring Bitcoin for $3 a coin, 1,500 a coin, like in December of 2018, if you were buying Bitcoin after it ran up to 65,000 and it ran all the way down to 15,000, where we are today presents huge gains. And if you need money, you will liquidate assets or borrow against them. And right? Borrowing against them doesn't affect the exchanges buying and selling Bitcoins. It's only those who sell.
Yeah, only the ones that are selling. And there was a comment. This was on Anthony Pompliano's channel. I forgot the guy's name. Silva, something. He talked about how this is Bitcoin's IPO moment, because now we actually have liquidity in the system. Because before in 2021, 2022, you can only take so much out before you crash the market. But now you can take out billions and it's not a big deal. He said that's why he thinks that the people that were there, they're de-risking themselves, which is true, and they're taking it out for the dollar, which kind of goes against the ethos of Bitcoin. But hey, here we are, and I think that is the light that shines in. People want
the underlying ethos of capitalism, I think, will trump any philosophy beyond that.
Right. And when you got to pay your bills,
and when you want to pay your bills, or you have new things that you need, maybe you want to start a business and you need to seed it with 5 million or 10 billion or 35 Bitcoin, whatever.
Yeah, you would think though, like if you had all that Bitcoin, maybe you're just like tired of the whole, like if you've been around since like 2011, you're like, I'm just tired. I know people are tired in the chat.
Richer and richer every year.
Yeah.
How does that become tiring? I don't comprehend that.
Oh, well.
You would know.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for calling me out.
Getting richer and richer every year.
The thing is like, I look at it and I think Michael Saylor had a good comment about it. He said, why would, if you owned real estate in Manhattan or in Central Park, why would you sell that to anything? It would just keeps appreciating. So why don't you just take a loan against it?
No real estate on the planet more valuable or ever has been more valuable or projected to be more valuable. Why would you trade down?
Yeah.
Is the emphasis of that, right? Why would
Yeah.
you ever trade down? I
Yeah.
can't imagine a world except for, like, for instance, I want to build my home here in Costa Rica. I do need to liquidate some assets, but I'm not liquidating my Bitcoin.
Yeah. And if you think about it, like if you had $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, right? And you said, I want $1 billion. Okay. You can take a loan against it. And then they say, okay, well, if you want $1 billion, you got to give us 2 billion, right? Or if they do the Jerry and say, okay, well, here's $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. I'm only going to get, $150 million, which is fine. Yeah. Which, if you're, which is, I say like 150 million is like just fine. But if you take out 150 million and, your liquidation price will probably be so low, you never get, not that you never, it'd be very difficult to liquidate yourself. I think it would be something to consider unless you were just like, I'm just so tired of this. I want out. And that's it. Yeah. Jordy Weiser. All right. Well, Jerry, any last words of wisdom for the people out there that are tired in the market?
No words of wisdom, but I have a word of gratitude. Thank you, everybody who tunes into this thing every Sunday. I really appreciate all the wonderful comments I've seen on the YouTube channel in the comment section. People giving me love. I really appreciate that. It makes an old man feel good to know that he's wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody says, okay, boomer, but no one says, are you okay, boomer? Exactly. All right for that one, everybody. We'll see you guys in the next week's show. Adios.